Hi, welcome back to the second half of the OHMazing Way podcast. My name is Beth Reese. I'm your host, and I'm here with Danielle Etter talking about a very near and dear topic to my heart, and really something we're really seeing in society, and that is we're talking about eating disorders, body image issues, and really being a stand to think about how they might happen, what to look for. And then in the second half, we're going to start to talk about what to do if you start to notice the characteristics, which some of that we covered in the first half, as well as what we can do to prevent it. And Danielle and I were just talking about that, how important it is to get that it isn't, that something is like wrong. It's an illness. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an illness.
Yeah. Illness. And, and how important it is to talk about it and not to isolate yourself and to try to take on that shame and the judgment. And one of the things that was really transformative for Grace, my daughter, who shared with me that she has an eating disorder, for those just trying to catch up for anyone just watching the second half or listening to the second half. But soon into it, she said she wanted to tell her siblings, Jordan and Cole. And so I was with her and kind of listening in because she wanted me there. And so Jordan said to her, Jordan listened, and Jordan, has, had some experiences of just thinking about like food and what she eats, what makes her feel good. And Jordan said to her, Grace, do you get that this isn't you? That it's like it's something outside of you. And Grace was like, yes. So, and Jordan just said, I'm here for you if you need anything. And then when she told Cole, and Cole is such an empathetic soul, and I could hear him like listening, and I know he was moved by it. And then he said, and he knew I was listening too, and he said, well, Grace, what I want you to know is that if you or mom need anything, I am here for you.
Oh,
and just for her to have and her other parents, she has of course her dad, and then her other mom, her stepmom, but we call her mom, other mom. Just to have everybody on the team rally around her, I think was so important, and not to make her wrong, but just really to love and support her. And you were sharing with me that there are a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are now coming forward to seek treatment. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So as I talk about what to do and how to prevent these things, I'll use the term caregiver, because that doesn't just apply to parents. It applies to spouses a lot of the time. So, I'm seeing a lot more of women and men in their 30s, 40s, and even 50s come into treatment for the first time, and they're doing beautifully. And I think that might be due to more education, less of a stigma, more availability of treatment. And I also think that we stay sick if we live in shame, and we allow shame to keep this eating disorder a secret. And more people are being courageous and coming out and saying, I've had this for 20 years. And I'm done having it. So it's a shift, and it's a shift that really makes me feel encouraged and happy.
That's great. That's great. And so, Danielle, let's take some time and think about, and again, if you're seeing some of the characteristics or experiencing them yourself, what are some things you can do?
So the first thing to do, well, I have to say you did so beautifully by your daughter. You really did. The first thing to do is to go to a professional who can assemble what we call a multidisciplinary team. This would include a psychotherapist or psychologist who's an eating disorder specialist, or does what we call ED-informed therapy. Meaning that they know the best practices for treatment, right? An eating disorder informed dietitian. So the dietitian can work with them on what their meals need to look like, proper weight restoration, things like that. A physician, so primary care doctor, to monitor vitals and, vitals, blood work, EKG, things like that. And possibly a psychiatrist. Most of my clients are on medication because of to treat the comorbid conditions like the depression and the anxiety or the obsessiveness that goes along with eating disorders. So that's the first thing to do. I also add that family therapy and family involvement is essential in the treatment. Parents, I think a lot of parents fear that they are the problem, but what I want them to understand is that they are the solution with a lot of these kids and teenagers. So the family needs to be involved, whether that's parents, spouses, any caregivers, because this illness affects the entire family. So what might a family learn in therapy and being involved in family therapy? That might be some psychoeducation about what is an eating disorder. So how to speak sensitively to a person with an eating disorder, how to validate them during meals, what their meals actually look like and should look like, strategies for making it more comfortable for them to eat meals or to sit after meals so they don't use their eating disorder symptoms. So yeah, it's really, really important for families to be involved because they are the solution.
That's so great. And then are there things that we can do, to prevent, to be on the front side of it, to try to seek to prevent this from happening?
This is my favorite thing to talk about because it is so important. And I think it's also hopeful. It's hard to feel helpless as a parent or caregiver. So I think this is a really hopeful thing to talk about. So I would say, firstly, we need to be cognizant about how we talk to our kids about their bodies and how we speak about our own bodies. This is not to blame parents for contributing to body image issues if they have, but rather to help them be more mindful about how they treat themselves. I've heard countless times from clients that their mothers and fathers were always on a diet growing up or refused to give up a day of exercise for fear of getting fat, right? Parents will speak disparagingly about their own bodies as if something was wrong with them.
I remember early in our meetings, you and with Grace, you point blank asked me, like, how are you with your body?
Right.
And I was like, no. And the truth of the matter is, well, I heard my neighbor describe his slightly overweight dog as fluffy. And I was like, I like that. I'm fluffy too. And my response was, I'm 50 and probably for the first time and have hit menopause. And so things are a little fluffy around the midsection and have just come to this like compassionate place of like, and this too.
Right. And that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But it has taken something. Right. And yes. I did grow up with, a parent who dieted a lot and that sort of thing. So in the space of like the OHMazing Way and mindfulness and yoga on and off the mat, the part of yoga often known as svadhyaya, which is self-study, right? I think the more, and part of what I'm hearing in this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, is as we can become aware of our own histories,
yes,
and aware of our environment and what, just from the nature of living, right? Of what's been presented to us and what we've ingested, whether, and I'm thinking like social media and all of those things.
Yes.
As we're aware of them, we can then start to unpack, how have I responded to those external factors? I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, just as parents, we can just be, come to be aware of our own influences and how we are speaking them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also want to, I hear this so often. Moms apologizing to their daughters for giving them particular body parts. Oh, you have my legs. Oh, sorry about that. And the kid internalizes that as, oh my God, there's something wrong with my legs.
Sorry,
Or there's
laughing,
something
but
wrong
that's
with
not
my
funny.
arms. I know, but it's true. And I have to say, I despise the word fat as an adjective, and not only because it's used to hurt people, but because it's boring. It's boring. There's no good information in the word fat.
Thank you.
I'll say to my own kids, we don't use the word fat because it tells me nothing about that person. I'll say, tell me about his or her personality or interactions you've had with this person, but don't describe their body shape. It's irrelevant.
I love
It's
that.
irrelevant.
When the kids were little, the words stupid and dumb were like bad words
Yes,
in our house for the same
they
reason.
are bad words. Yes, they are bad words. They're so icky. They're irrelevant because how do you know? How do you know that person's really stupid or dumb?
That's right. It's boring. I love
Yes,
that.
it's boring. Also, the way we talk about food, we tend to label foods good or bad, like sweets are bad and vegetables and fruits are good. I understand the logic completely because we want our kids to eat healthy, obviously, but I think it serves to shame kids for eating certain food instead of educating them about proper nutrition. So I like to believe there's room for all foods. And early on in my career, I heard a brilliant dietitian refer to foods as either sometimes or always. So
Mm.
sometimes foods are those foods that aren't nutrient dense, like cookies and cakes and ice cream, right? And always foods are foods that provide us all the vitamins and minerals that we need to be healthy. And just to share a little anecdote, as a kid, my mom and dad did a fabulous job of never labeling food. So I didn't realize this until I became a psychotherapist, but they did fabulously. My mom would serve us all kinds of food, and we had all kinds of food available all the time. I distinctly remember having a cabinet that had cookies and chips and candy in it, and we called it the goodie cabinet. And I thought that was really a nice term because it's positive. We didn't eat goodies every day, all day, but we had them around all the time. So I think what my parents did is taught us the concept of sometimes and always foods, probably without even intending to do it.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. And, lastly, what I'll say about, well, not lastly, but I don't think there needs to be a scale in the house necessarily, or I don't think kids need to see parents or using the scale. We don't really need to weigh ourselves every day. That's really more something for doctors to manage, dietitians and doctors to manage. We really don't need to be on the scale every day. I don't have one in my house, and I really just don't like the idea of anybody having one. So, lastly, you talked about social media. What I will say is I think that's a big problem for body image, and it serves as a platform for unhealthy comparisons, right? Kids are bombarded with messages and images that are praising not only kids, but as adults too. Bombarded with messages and images praising thinness and appearance rather than ideas or new insights that people have, right? I really dislike the idea of likes because kids will measure their self-worth by something arbitrary like number of likes. I think this speaks to our human need for belonging and wanting to be accepted. So I understand it, but I think it's hurting our kids. My kids think I'm the worst because they'll ask me, when am I going to get a phone? When am I going to get a phone? And I said, well, we have one. I have a landline with an answering machine. So I'll say, oh yeah, well, it's right in the other room. We have one already. Because I just don't want them exposed to it. Yeah. So like I said, they think I'm the worst. This is not to shame parents whose kids have phones, and we all have unique kids. And as parents, we make different choices for our individual child. But I do think that too much exposure to social media is really harmful.
And you and I talked about that, and you gave me a recommendation for Grace, and probably not just for Grace. And what would you share would be the recommendation about social media and electronic time like that for?
So I think, so for social media in particular, I first of all, I would pay attention to what they are sort of looking at on social media, or what they're putting out there on social media. I think that's really important. I like the idea of an hour a day exposure to social media and electronics, where you can sort of access that kind of image or information. And because a lot of kids will access websites like pro-anorexic websites, and parents don't know. They just don't know. So I think an hour a day is good. And if your kid argues with you, you can say, well, we'll put the phone somewhere, and we'll make sure that you can hear it if your friend calls, right? Because it's not to take away their connection to their friends, but it's just sort of protect them from just being bombarded.
For sure, for sure. And I've shared with my kids, I was recently at a 7-day silent retreat, and we didn't have our phones for a week, which ended up being great. Like when I got my phone back, I was like, I don't want to touch it. But one of the things they coached us on was, every time you pick your phone up and you look at the screen, just notice, are you about to use your phone to distract you from life or whatever you're going through, or if you're feeling bored or discomfort about an experience, are you going to distract yourself from reality? Or are you picking up your phone to create a deeper connection with someone?
Right.
And so I've really taken that to heart. And there are times when I pick up my phone and I'm about to dive in and scroll through Instagram, and exactly how many likes did I have on that picture?
Right.
And I love that Instagram has talked about removing likes. But in looking at when I do that, it's really given me pause to go, you know what, instead of scrolling, I'm going to put my phone down and do 3 breaths, and then see what I'm about to do really that important. If it's worth doing today,
I love that.
Tomorrow. And often it's after the 3 breaths, it's no, let me go for a walk. Let me go do something, productive. Let me go be with my kids or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, just pausing and really thinking about what we're doing with our time.
I love that.
Yeah. So anything else to be looking out there for preventing? And I'm sure, there's so many things, but anything else you can think of for preventing eating disorders and body image issues?
I think I've named the big ones.
Great.
I will say that I think it's important for parents to be mindful of their own, be mindful of how they feel about themselves just throughout their lifetime. And if they are not feeling good about themselves, maybe they should go to therapy.
Right. And really, and again, and I just love that saying, life is living through us and is not us. So, how have past experiences, how do they inform how we react to something? And that there are ways to manage that, just from the awareness, and then choosing to go speak to a professional and really work through them. All really, really important suggestions. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for being with us today. And in the show notes, I'll list how you can get a hold of Danielle, and she has some resources to share, some books. I know at least one of them was just really critical to help support me and Grace and the other parents. It was something we all could read and get on the same page. So that'll be in the show notes. And just thank you so much for your time and for really being a loving stand for people who are experiencing these challenges.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so important to me to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, if you are out there listening and watching, thank you so much. Be sure to share this podcast. And if not the actual podcast, take the tools, take what you're learning and share them with others. Pay it forward. And as always, have a great day and be amazing. Thanks. See you next time.